to you with another Google Hangout. Hope you're well, wherever you're watching. As I did last week, I'm going to start off by doing a quick review of what we did in the previous Hangout with language, and then I'm going to move into this week's topic, okay? So if you watched last week, you might remember we talked about ways of discussing changes of mind, making decisions, changing them, and other uses of the word mind. Okay, I'm going to go into the sheet I have with some pieces of language on it. Bear with me. When I say bear with me, it means stay with me or please be patient while I do that. It's a very common thing for people to say when they want you to wait a moment while they do something before they continue. Okay, so bear with me while I open the sheet. Right, last week, looking at the word mind as a verb, we talked about minding children, we talked about minding your own business, meaning do not try to ask questions about things that are not relevant to your life, that are people's private affairs. We talked about the repeated message on the London Underground, mind the gap, meaning you should be aware of the gap between the platform and the train when stepping onto or off a carriage. We talked about minding your P's and Q's, so that's an idiomatic phrase in English that means remember to say please and thank you. We also asked questions, saying, would you mind putting your cigarette out? Would it bother you to put your cigarette out? Does anybody mind if I open the window? Does it bother anybody here if I open the window? Does anybody, it's a good question, or would anybody, it's a good question to ask when you're speaking to a group of people. When you're speaking one-to-one, you can always just say, do you or would you? Like in the first example, would you mind putting your cigarette out? But here when you're speaking, and of course, if there's 3 or 4 people, you could also say, would you all mind putting your cigarettes out, because you're addressing them as a group. When you're saying, does anybody mind, you're asking, is there one person in this group who minds, who bothers? So it's a common question to ask when you have a group of 3 or more. Does anybody mind if I open the window? Using the word mind to say, does it bother anybody? And do you fancy pizza or curry for dinner? The response, I don't mind. I'm easy. It doesn't bother me if we eat pizza. It doesn't bother me if we eat curry. We also talked about the noun forms of mind. So you can change your mind after you make a decision. You can make up your mind when you make a decision. Sometimes it takes a bit of time, but you finally make up your mind. And when people become impatient with you, they will say to you, oh, come on, just make up your mind. When things are on your mind, we said that means you are thinking about them. So for somebody could be on your mind because you missed them, or something you want to say to somebody, something that you think is important to say to somebody, could be on your mind as well. Finally, we talked about people being crazy, temporarily crazy maybe, and said those people were out of their minds. So we finished last week with another idiomatic expression, do you mind, which we used to express annoyance with what somebody is doing when we feel that they are not paying attention to our own needs, or they are not being considerate of us. For example, if I'm watching the TV and my flatmate comes in and switches on the radio, my response to that will be, excuse me, do you mind? Or, sorry, do you mind? I'm watching TV. And what I want to do today is, sorry, I'm getting a little, I'll come back to you here on the screen. Okay, I've lost a picture there, so I'm not sure what's happened. Bear with me, please. Okay, all I have here is a flashing screen. If you can't see me and you're watching, would you mind um, letting me know if I may be posting on the Facebook page or something, please? Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back into the screen share, okay, and talk you through it, because at least I have that. And I don't have the, I don't know if I'm on screen with you, okay? Okay, so as I said, what I wanted to do today was go on and jump off from that position that I was that we finished with. Do you mind? And give responses to those. Okay. So obviously, if something bothers you or if something doesn't bother you, you need to be able to respond and say, yes, it does bother me. No, it doesn't bother me. What we're going to do today is look at some good idiomatic and fluent ways to respond to those questions. Okay. So I've got a Windows phone. I had an iPhone, and if you are familiar with different common smartphone platforms, Windows and Apple and Android, you might know that some apps that are available on the iPhone aren't available on the Windows phone. One of those is Instagram, the popular picture sharing and picture taking app. So now that I've got an iPhone, some friends of mine who love Instagram and who know it's not available on the Windows Phone platform say to me, do you mind not being able to use Instagram? In other words, does it bother you not to be able to use Instagram on your new phone? Just check the grammar there. Notice how it's, do you mind not being able? So mind is followed by an ing form, and of course the negative infinitive, not being able, is used. So they say, do you mind not being able to use Instagram? Okay. Another example of people asking if things bother you would be to ask you, for example, here, if I work in a bakery, as a friend of mine does, he gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I think he starts work at about 4:30. So he gets up really, really early. Really, really early in English is commonly referred to as the crack of dawn. So the very opening of the sun on the earth in the morning is the crack of dawn. And I asked him, do you mind having to get up at the crack of dawn? Okay. So let's look at one more example, and this is very commonly heard by people being asked questions by journalists. Okay, and of course you see this in TV shows, American TV shows, which feature police. Okay, these are what we call cop shows. Police officer wants to talk to somebody that they think could have information about a crime they're investigating, and they'll say, "Excuse me, would you mind if I asked you a couple of questions?" Okay. So here the question: do you mind not having Instagram? Do you mind getting up at the crack of dawn? And would you mind if I asked you a couple of questions? Require an answer of yes or no. Okay. So of course the first response could be no, I don't mind. Okay. Try not to respond to questions in English, repeating language from the question. It's something that a lot of people, non-native English speakers, do when they are improving their English, especially if they haven't had much contact with language speakers in an English-speaking country. They are interested in showing their command as a language, and they think one way of doing that is to give very full answers. And often, to give a full answer, they repeat a lot of the information that was in the question. Don't do that. It isn't fluent. So if the question is, do you mind not having Instagram? The answer, no, I don't mind, is a strange answer for an English speaker. It just repeats information in the question. It is a yes or no question, so we should respond with yes or no. Here we're responding no, and so the first thing we're going to say is no, and then we're going to follow that up by saying how much we don't mind. When we say no, not at all, it means that it doesn't bother me. There's no aspect of that situation that bothers me. Another way to do it is to say no, not in the least, or no, not in the slightest. Okay. So not at all, not in the least, and not in the slightest are three emphatic, emphasizing ways of responding to a question when somebody asks you just if something annoys you or if something bothers you. Okay. Let me just remind you that I am not coming back on screen because I've had a little problem with my camera. I'm going to just stay on the page with you and talk you through it. Okay. So these nice and short emphatic ways, not at all, not the least, not the slightest, are very common ways of responding to a question asking if something bothers you, and when you want to say no, it doesn't. Now, you can give long answers, but if you give long answers, don't use the same language that's in the question. Remember the question? We're responding to the questions that are here. Do you mind not being able to use Instagram? Do you mind having to get up at the crack of dawn? Would you mind if I asked you a couple questions? We're going to leave this last one out for the moment because it's a different type of question. It's a request. It's not really a yes/no question. So let's just stay with these two. Do you mind not being able to use Instagram? Do you mind not having, or do you mind having to get up at the crack of dawn? If you look at the long answers here, we're not repeating the word mind, and that's very important in English. Okay. We paraphrase a lot, so we express the same information with different words, but we avoid repeating the same word. Okay, a quick example of how important that is in English. If you go to see a film with a friend, and you both didn't like the film, when you are leaving the cinema, your friend might say to you, "Wow, that was terrible, wasn't it?" An English speaker will not respond with, "Yes, that was terrible." An English speaker will find another word that means terrible, if they want to agree, and use it instead. So the exchange would be, "Wow, that was terrible, wasn't it?" And then you'd say, "Yeah, awful," or "Yeah, rubbish," but you would not repeat the word terrible. And this is an important aspect of fluency. So when somebody says, "Do you mind?" don't respond with, "I don't mind." You can use a short answer, "Not at all," "Not in the slightest," "Not in the least." Or you can use different language that means the same thing. "No, it doesn't bother me at all." Okay, bother means mind, so we use it as a response. "No, I'm not bothered in the least." Of course, those "in the least" and "at all" are interchangeable. You could say, "No, it doesn't bother me in the least," or "No, I'm not bothered at all." Okay. Another example of a common response when you want to say that you really don't mind is, "No, I couldn't care less." And finally, this is very idiomatic, but commonly enough used. "I couldn't give a rat's ass." Okay. The ass being the behind part of the rodent rat. Okay. So we've looked at short answers to the question. Does something bother you? Does something do you mind about something? No, not at all, not in the least, not in the slightest. And we've looked at long answers where we have changed the verb. So if somebody asks you, does it bother you, which they could do, let's go back up to our questions. Do you mind not being able to use Instagram? Could be, does it bother you not to be able to use Instagram? The grammar is a little different, okay? Does it bother you not to be able to use Instagram, okay? Or does not being able to use Instagram bother you? Does not being able to use Instagram bother you? The response would be, no, I don't mind at all. No, I don't mind in the least, okay? Right. What if you do mind? What if it does bother you? Notice my use of do and does there to emphasize the contrast with it not bothering you. What if you do mind? What if it does bother you? Well, then we will decide how much it bothers us, and we will respond expressing that. Okay. People like to be polite in English, so it's good to have phrases that suggest moderation, that suggest that you are not an unreasonable person. So a very common answer would be a little, yes. Okay, so you are admitting with your yes that it bothers you, but you are saying that it only bothers you a little. Okay. So do you mind, Paul, not having Instagram on your Windows phone? A little, yes, because a lot of my friends have it, and I would like to be able to share pictures with them. Okay. If it really bothers me, if it's something that I'm annoyed about and I really don't like, then I can express that as well. Paul, does it bother you not being able to have Instagram on your phone? Yeah, a lot actually. Okay. Notice that I'm not saying that in an aggressive way. It's not appropriate given the question is just about an application on a phone. But I am engaging and I'm expressing the amount that it bothers me. Okay. Which is quite different than the first answer. So we have two possible answers indicating the level of annoyance for us, or how much we mind about the thing we're talking about. Yeah, a little, or yeah, a lot actually. And you should go on then to explain why. Let's look at some longer answers, okay? This is a nice beginning here to tell you the truth. So I'm going to be honest with you. When you use this phrase, to tell you the truth, you are signaling to your listener that what I'm going to say now is the honestly what I believe. Okay. So it's a nice way to introduce a criticism or a complaint or an objection because you have started by highlighting, you started by focusing on your good characteristic of honesty. You've brought people's attention to that, so now it's okay for you to be a little negative. But to tell you the truth, I find it a little annoying. Now, I'm sure you're perfectly familiar with the word annoying. It means that something makes you a little bit angry, or something you find something bothers you a little. Next to that, I put the word irksome, which we use a lot in English. Remember, it's always going to be these old English words that are going to be the ones that give you trouble. But this is a very common word in the language in this context. Okay, it means annoying, but not strongly annoying, only a little annoying. Okay, and you can see the old suffix S-O-N-E, which we don't have in many words in English. Fulsome. Fulsome praise is an example of the S-O-N-E suffix being used. So a lot of praise, fulsome praise for a film or for a person. And here we have the word irksome. And there is a verb, which you see in the next line. So to tell you the truth, I find it a little irksome because I'm not able to communicate with my friends or to engage with my friends using the Instagram app because I have a Windows phone. To tell you the truth, it really annoys me. It really irks. Okay, so we've just used annoy now in the verb form and irk in the verb form. And finally, notice the last line there. All we're doing is intensifying the amount of annoyance we feel. Okay, I find it hugely annoying. And here's a good example of collocation. The word hugely. Okay, an adverb qualifying the adjective. Okay, and you could of course say I find it very annoying. I find it really annoying. But if you want to go stronger than that, hugely is a word that you collocate here. I find it hugely annoying. And I should point out to you that a lot of non-native speakers would probably say, it's very annoying for me. Or they might even try to use the word hugely, but they will use the structure, it's hugely annoying for me. That's not an English structure, don't use it. Okay? When you want to say that something is interesting or exciting or boring or depressing or sad for you, you can either just leave out the for me part and say it's hugely annoying, it's very interesting, or if you want to include the part that this is for you, then you should completely change the structure and say I find it hugely annoying. Okay, I find Woody Allen films hugely entertaining, at least early ones anyway. I find the Saw films quite disturbing. Okay, not those films are very disturbing for me. Okay, so there are long answers there to the questions. Do you mind not being able to have Instagram on your or use Instagram on your phone? Do you mind as a baker having to get up at the crack of dawn? Okay. Let's just finish by looking at different ways of using emphasis. Okay. Imagine that the conversation about phones continues. Okay. So your friend has started the conversation by saying, "Do you mind not being able to use Instagram?" And I say, to tell you the truth, I find it a little annoying because I want to be able to see all my friends' photos on that they're posting, and I can't. The conversation could go on about phones and the problems with certain phones, the problems with an Android, or the problems with an iPhone, or the problems with a Windows phone. And you could say to your friend, I also find the fact that Spotify doesn't work very well on the Windows phone a little annoying. Okay, or I also find the Spotify app on the Windows phone a little annoying. If you have a Windows phone, you probably have noticed that the Spotify app doesn't work brilliantly. Now, if you want to emphasize what the thing that you find annoying, you can change the structure. So I said, I find the Spotify app a little annoying, but to make it clearer to you or to emphasize it more to you that I find it annoying, I could say, what I find really annoying on the Windows phone is the Spotify app. Okay? So by introducing this structure, what I find really annoying, you're saying, I'm going to tell you something that I find really annoying, and you are getting the listener's attention before you give them the information. You are signaling to them that they need to listen because you're about to give them, you're about to say something that is very important or very annoying in this case for you. So it's a nice structure to use to be more emphatic. You can simply say, I find the Spotify app on the Windows phone really annoying, but that will not impact on the listener as much as if you say, what I find really annoying, And notice my intonation there. What I find really annoying, and the stress, I'm stressing really. What I find really annoying on the app, on the Windows phone is the Spotify app. Okay, or I can introduce it as one thing I find hugely irksome. Similarly, one thing I find really annoying on the Windows phone is the Spotify app. And also I can put it right at the start. The Spotify app on Windows Phone is one thing that really annoys me. Okay, so there's some nice emphatic phrases for you to use when you're having a conversation about things that you are bothered by, things that annoy you, things that hurt you. Okay. Let me do a quick review. We started today's class doing a review of last week's language. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of that again. There it is very briefly, the noun forms of mind and the verb forms of mind and some common questions using mind. We said that this week we would focus on responses to questions asking you if something bothers you. We said that it was important not to repeat the language in the question. You could give either short answers or long answers, and apart from just saying yes or no, you could emphasize no by adding the words or the phrases at all, in the least, and slightest. So you've got no, not at all, no, not in the least, and no, not in the slightest. Longer answers we could also use, but we made sure that we changed the information verb. So we didn't repeat the verb mind, as that was in the question, and we had a few ways of saying, responding. So do you mind not being able to use Instagram? No, it doesn't bother me at all. No, I couldn't care less. Of course, if you do mind, we said it was important to indicate how much it bothered you. So do you mind not being able to use Instagram on your Windows phone? A little, yes, or yes, a lot actually, depending on how much you mind. We could give longer answers as well in response to the question, do you mind not being able to use Instagram on your Windows phone? The longer answers we said were useful to introduce with an indication that you were going to be honest and say what you believed. And so you would start by saying, to tell you the truth. And you would follow that with, I find it a little annoying, or I find it hugely annoying, or it really annoys me. Finally, we've just looked at how you can continue the conversation, and because they have talked about something that is annoying, you can bring to their attention something that annoys you by using these emphatic structures. What I find really annoying is the Spotify app. So one person is talking about how they are a little annoyed because they can't use Instagram, and the other person is responding and saying, well, actually, I don't care about Instagram, but what I find really annoying is the Spotify app on the Windows phone. And the other two structures that I have there on the page also allow you to do that, to really emphasize and clarify that what annoys you is different to what annoys the person you're speaking to. Okay, that's all for this week. I shall see you soon, next week, same time. Hopefully I shall have an image and my smiling face will be visible to you. In the meantime, take care, all the best. Bye-bye.